Give me your eyes for just 1 second. Give me your eyes so I can see everything that I keep missing. Give me your love for humanity. Give me your arms for the broken hearted, the ones that are far beyond my reach. Give me your heart for the ones forgotten. Give me your eyes so I can see. Yeah.
Welcome back to the next video on the commandments, and today we're going to be talking about the 7th commandment, you shall not steal. Martin Luther says, what does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not take our neighbor's money or possessions or get them in any dishonest way, but help him improve and protect his possessions and income. We're going to apply this commandment 3 ways today. First thing we're going to talk about is this, that to not steal means first and foremost to not steal another person. Now that might seem obvious, but it certainly has not been obvious throughout history. We're not to steal another human being, to kidnap them and sell them into slavery, as was done in Africa years ago, and our country has suffered the result of that stealing over the course of the last centuries, and even to today, a lot of unrest about that injustice that was done. Stealing, kidnapping people is also being done even today around the world. And in fact, many are being kidnapped and sold into various kinds of slavery. That is wrong, wrong, wrong. We're going to post some websites in the Dig Deeper section of this video that will help you learn more about that and maybe give you some ideas about what you can maybe do to stop that kind of thing from happening. It's a terrible injustice to steal another person and to have them enslaved. Now, just to note this too, a little side note is that some people say, well, the Bible's bad. And you might hear friends say this even because the Bible was used to justify slavery years ago. Actually, the Bible was misused to justify slavery. When the Bible talks about slavery and sometimes talks as if it's permissible, the kind of slavery, quote unquote, that the Bible is talking about is when a person would kind of sell themselves into servitude to pay off a debt. And so for a time, they would be a slave, quote unquote. But that was actually a servitude kind of thing rather than the kidnapping of another person against their will and selling them into slavery, as was done in our country for many years. And like I said, it's still being done even in our country and around the world in many terrible ways. So that is against the 7th commandment, and the Bible should never be used to justify that sort of thing. Second, you shall not steal means to not take someone else's property without their permission. I think that's the way we usually think about this commandment, is not taking property.
My candy, it's gone.
Where'd it go?
Mom and Dad ate it. I ate it. I ate it all.
Mommy ate all your candy?
I ate it.
Did you eat all the chocolate things?
Yes. I didn't want to wake you up.
Did you eat the cookies?
I ate all of it. Daddy too.
Save some for me. I wanted to try Skittles. I want to eat it. Daddy, do you eat my candy? No, don't eat my candy.
The commandment means that we're not supposed to go into Walmart and steal a CD or something and take that without paying for it. But it also means property as in like stealing someone else's homework or taking answers off their test, even if you have their permission to copy answers from a test. The fact is they don't have the right to give you that permission. That's not theirs to give, and so that would be stealing, to steal answers off someone else's test. We can't steal money from our parents or money from friends or that sort of thing. It is a grave evil when we take what belongs to someone else. God has entrusted that to someone else to care for and to manage for His glory. And when we take that, that is a grave evil. Even if we're going to be like Robin Hood, where Robin Hood is kind of renowned, at least in theory, for stealing from the rich and giving to the poor.
In the name of King Richard, you have stripped our wealth of what we have set aside to feed ourselves.
The laws of this land enslave people to its king. A king who demands loyalty but offers nothing in return.
That sort of thing is against this commandment. It's why the Bible over and over again commands us to share with those who are in need. When we see someone in need, it's our responsibility to ask the question, how can I best help that person in need? Our question is not, how can I give a handout and move on? Our question is, by this commandment, most certainly not, how can I take someone else's money to help that person in need? Or how can I get the government to take someone else's money to help that person in need? Our question should be, how can I best help? How can our church best help that person in need? And oftentimes, helping a person in need involves a lot more than just giving a little handout on the side. It involves a lot of time. It involves a lot of effort to truly help. And yet that's what God calls us to do, to truly help those in need. Check out this verse from Ephesians. I think it's a very interesting verse that St. Paul writes. He says this, "Anyone who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work, doing something useful with their own hands, that they may have something to share with those in need." So you see, the opposite of stealing here, Paul says, is not stealing. The opposite of stealing is working hard so that you can have something to share with those in need. That's the goal that God calls us to in this commandment, as Martin Luther says in his explanation as well. Third thing is this, and for this third thing, I'm going to turn to a guy named Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager is a Jewish person, a deep thinker. He understands the commandments very well, and he talks about a third application of this commandment. Let's listen to what Dennis has to say.
The third enormously important meaning of the commandment against stealing concerns the many non-material things each person owns: their reputation, their dignity, their trust, and their intellectual property. Let's quickly run through these. 1. A person's reputation. Stealing a person's good name, whether through libel, slander, or gossip, is a particularly destructive form of theft because, unlike money or property, once a person's good name has been stolen, it can almost never be fully restored. 2. A person's dignity. The act of stealing a person's dignity is known as humiliation, and humiliating a person, especially in public, can do permanent damage to what is perhaps the most precious thing any of us owns, our dignity. 3. A person's trust. Stealing a person's trust is known as deceiving someone. In fact, in Hebrew, a term for tricking someone is gnevat da'at, which literally means stealing knowledge. One example is tricking people into buying something, as when a real estate agent omits telling a prospective purchaser all the flaws in a home in order to make a sale. Another example would be when someone deceives another person with insincere proclamations of love in order to obtain material or sexual favors. 4. A person's intellectual property. This form of theft includes anything from copying software or downloading music and movies without paying for them to stealing a person's words, what we know as plagiarism. Stealing a life, a person, a spouse, material property, intellectual property, a reputation, dignity, or trust. There is hardly any aspect of human life that is not harmed, sometimes irreparably so, by stealing.
Wow! To think that I thought this commandment was just like about not taking a CD from Target. It involves so much more than that. So some questions that I have for myself and for you as we close. First one, if we use this law as a mirror, how have you violated this commandment? What are the sins that you have in your life that you need to confess to God, or perhaps confess to others? Second question is this: let's use this commandment as a guide for our Christian life. How are you going to change your life now that you've considered this commandment? Do you need to make restitution to anyone for anything that you've taken, whether you've taken their reputation? Do you need to start building up their reputation again if you've torn it down? Do you need to restore anything in terms of anything that you've stolen from them? What questions do you still have about this commandment that you want us to answer in class? Be sure to write those down in the Think section of this video. Thanks for watching the video. I pray it's been a blessing to you, and we'll see you in class.